Millions of fans roared their names on Sunday afternoons, watched them dance to the Super Bowl Shuffle, and dismantle the New England Patriots 46-10. But when the stadium lights went out for the last time, a much tougher game began. 40 years after the 1985 Chicago Bears delivered the most dominant championship season in NFL history, the men who built it are paying a bill nobody showed them at the time. This is where the monsters of the Midway ended up. One is the man the whole offense was built to feed, and the man whose death changed how football talks about pain. Walter Payton played running back for the Bears for 13 seasons and retired as the NFL's all-time leading rusher, a title he held until 2002. He never fumbled his effort, not once, not on a single carry, in a career defined by a simple refusal to run out of bounds. Payton grew up in Columbia, Mississippi, the son of a factory worker, and starred at Jackson State before Chicago made him the fourth overall pick in 1975. He carried a Bears team that had nearly nothing else going for it through 9 straight losing seasons before the defense and the offensive line finally caught up to him in 1985. He was the NFL MVP in 1977. He was the best player on the greatest defense ever assembled, and Mike Ditka's decision to hand the ball to a rookie lineman instead of Payton for a Super Bowl touchdown became one of the most second-guessed calls in football history. In February of 1999, Payton revealed he was suffering from primary sclerosing cholangitis, a rare liver disease. Doctors initially told him he would need a transplant within 2 years. Weeks later, that timeline collapsed. The disease had already progressed into bile duct cancer, and a transplant was no longer an option because the anti-rejection drugs would only accelerate the tumor's growth. He spent his final months not hiding but campaigning, filming public service announcements urging Americans to become organ donors. He died at his home near Chicago on November 1st, 1999, at age 45. A public memorial was held at Soldier Field, the stadium where he built his legend, drawing NFL Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, Jesse Jackson, and thousands of fans. He was cremated, and per his mother's wishes, his ashes were laid to rest beside her at Rest Haven Cemetery in Columbia, Mississippi, in the small town where the story started. Sweetness carried the Bears on his back for a decade before there was a defense worth talking about. Walter Payton went home to his mother's grave in the same Mississippi soil where he learned to run. 2 is the safety who turned his own death into a scientific donation and whose story reshaped how the NFL is forced to talk about brain injuries. Dave Duerson started at strong safety for that 1985 defense and made 4 consecutive Pro Bowls. He was smart, direct, and outspoken, the kind of player who later served on the NFL Players Association's Disability Board, reviewing benefit claims from other retired players. Born in 1960 and raised in Muncie, Indiana, Duerson played at Notre Dame before Chicago drafted him in the 3rd round in 1983. After football, he ran a food distribution company and built a reputation as a sharp, successful businessman. In his final years, friends and family noticed a change. His memory was slipping. His mood swung violently. He struggled with headaches he had never described before. On February 17, 2011, Duerson was found dead at his home in Sunny Isles Beach, Florida, of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the chest. He had sent his family a text message beforehand asking that his brain be donated to Boston University for research into chronic traumatic encephalopathy. He had deliberately avoided shooting himself in the head. In May of 2011, researchers at Boston University confirmed what he suspected. Duerson's brain showed clear signs of CTE. He was buried at Cedar Grove Cemetery in Notre Dame, Indiana, on the campus where he once played. Duerson spent his playing days breaking up passes over the middle. In the end, he made one final calculated decision with the same clear head his teammates always trusted, and it forced an entire sport to look at what it had been hiding. If Duerson's decision to save his own brain for science is the detail that stays with you, tell me in the comments which member of this defense hit you hardest, because the next name on this list fought a slower, more public version of the same war. 3 is the defensive tackle who did the league's dirtiest work in the trenches for 13 seasons and then outlasted almost everyone in a different kind of fight. Steve McMichael, known to Chicago as Mongo, anchored the Bears' defensive line from 1981 to 1993, occupying blockers so that Mike Singletary, Otis Wilson, and Wilbur Marshall could fly to the football. Born in Houston in 1957, he grew up in Freer, Texas, starred at the University of Texas, and was cut by the New England Patriots as a rookie before Chicago picked him up as a free agent. He played a franchise record 191 consecutive games and finished second on the Bears' career sacks list. After football, he became a professional wrestler with World Championship Wrestling, joining Ric Flair's Four Horsemen, using the same booming, larger-than-life personality that made him a Chicago folk hero. In April of 2021, McMichael announced he had been diagnosed with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. The disease took his ability to walk, then his ability to speak. He was still campaigning for the Pro Football Hall of Fame from a wheelchair, and in February of 2024, he was finally elected. Unable to travel to Canton for the ceremony that August, the Hall of Fame sent his gold jacket and bust to his home in Homer Glen, Illinois, where former teammates including Richard Dent and Dan Hampton gathered to celebrate with him in person. McMichael was moved into hospice care in Joliet, Illinois, on April 23, 2025, and died that same afternoon at age 67, surrounded by his wife, Misty, and their daughter. A year later, researchers at Boston University announced that McMichael's donated brain showed severe chronic traumatic encephalopathy in addition to the ALS, evidence his wife said she hoped would help other families understand the link between the two diseases. Mongo spent his career absorbing hits so his teammates could make the highlight reels. Steve McMichael spent his final years unable to speak, using the last of his strength to write short notes to the visitors who still came to see him. 4 belongs to the rookie defensive lineman, whose story became a cautionary tale the moment the cheering stopped. William, the Refrigerator. Perry was a first-round pick in 1985, a 335-pound defensive tackle whom Mike Ditka insisted on lining up as a goal line fullback over the objections of defensive coordinator Buddy Ryan. Perry scored 3 rushing touchdowns as a rookie, including one in the Super Bowl, and became a global phenomenon almost overnight, appearing in commercials, on wrestling cards, and as an action figure. Born in Aiken, South Carolina in 1962, he had been an All-American at Clemson before the Bears made him a cultural punchline-turned-legend. The decline started quietly. In 2007, Perry was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, a rare autoimmune disorder that attacks the nervous system and left him at times unable to walk without a wheelchair. Diabetes followed. So did years of heavy drinking that friends and family struggled to get him to stop. By the mid-2000s, reporting revealed that Perry, who could no longer feel much below the shin, weighed well over 400 pounds and had been forced to sell his massive Super Bowl ring, the largest ever made, to help cover medical costs and IRS debt. He moved into his late father's house under the guardianship of his brother and later into an assisted living facility in his hometown of Aiken. His brother Michael Dean has said he believes Perry shows traces of CTE as well. The Fridge was the biggest personality on the most beloved defense in football history. William Perry became the league's clearest warning label for what fame and a football body can cost a man once the cameras move on. 5 is the punky quarterback who called his own plays and is now fighting a battle no headband can protect against. Jim McMahon quarterbacked the 1985 Bears with a rebellious streak that made him as famous as his arm, clashing openly with the NFL over uniform violations and with his own coach over play calls. Drafted from BYU in the first round in 1982, McMahon led Chicago to its only championship while nursing a body that was breaking down in real time, including a hit that left him with an undiagnosed broken neck he only discovered decades later on an X-ray. In 2012, McMahon revealed he had been diagnosed with early-onset dementia 5 years earlier, after he began forgetting the names of people he had known for years and losing track of how he got home while driving familiar streets. He described suicidal thoughts during the darkest stretches of depression that came with the diagnosis. Treatment that realigned his neck and relieved pressure on his spinal fluid eased the migraines, but the memory loss has never fully lifted. McMahon has said publicly, without qualification, that he believes he has chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a disease that can currently only be confirmed after death. He has watched friends and teammates go before him, from Dave Duerson's suicide to Steve McMichael's ALS, and has become one of the most visible former players speaking out about the NFL's handling of concussions and painkillers. He is alive today in his late 60s, still doing the one thing CTE has not yet taken from him, talking about it publicly so the next generation of players might listen. The punky QB never worried about protecting his image. Jim McMahon has spent his retirement trying to protect the players who came after him. If you have made it this far, hit subscribe, because the next man on this list never took a snap and never wore a helmet, and he might be the most feared name in the entire story. 6 is the architect of the defense itself, a man players either loved without limit or feared without limit, sometimes both in the same season. Buddy Ryan served as the Bears' defensive coordinator and built the revolutionary 46 defense that terrorized the NFL in 1985, sending 8 players to the Pro Bowl and finishing a season many analysts still call the greatest defensive performance in league history. Born in Oklahoma in 1931, Ryan was a combat veteran of the Korean War before he ever coached a snap, and he ran his defense with the same blunt authority he carried out of the Army. His feud with head coach Mike Ditka was an open secret in the Bears locker room, 2 men with entirely different visions for the same championship team, and Ryan's players carried him off the field on their shoulders after the Super Bowl win, a gesture aimed as much at Ditka as it was a celebration. Ryan left for the Philadelphia Eagles head coaching job before the Bears even reported for training camp the following season. He later coached the Arizona Cardinals and finished his career as a defensive coordinator for the Houston Oilers. Buddy Ryan died on June 28, 2016, in Lexington, Kentucky, following a long series of health problems at age 85. He was buried in Lexington, in the Kentucky bluegrass country, where he had spent his later years breeding horses, about as far from a football field as a man who built the most violent defense in NFL history could get. The 46 defense broke quarterbacks for a living. Buddy Ryan spent his final years raising thoroughbreds in the quiet Kentucky hills, and left the game the same way he coached it, entirely on his own terms. 7 is the only man on this list still walking the sideline in spirit, and the one whose own heart nearly ended the story before it was finished. Mike Ditka coached the Bears from 1982 to 1992, dragging a franchise with 2 winning seasons in the previous 19 years to a championship in just his 4th season. A Hall of Fame tight end himself during his playing days with the Bears, Eagles, and Cowboys, Ditka coached with the same physical fury he had played with, breaking his own hand punching a locker during a halftime tirade in 1983. In November of 1988, in the middle of another playoff run, Ditka suffered a heart attack on the sideline of his own career and was back in full command of the team within weeks. It was not his last warning. He suffered a minor stroke in 2012, and in November of 2018, he was hospitalized again in Florida after a heart attack while playing golf, this time requiring a pacemaker. He is alive today, in his mid-80s, still doing television commentary, still running his charitable foundation for retired players struggling with medical bills, the very crisis that swallowed his own refrigerator whole. Da Coach built a champion out of players who mostly never fully recovered from the cost of winning it. Mike Ditka is the one still standing at the finish line, watching the sport that nearly killed him more than once keep asking the same bill of everyone who ever wore the jersey he coached. They rest now in a Mississippi churchyard beside a mother, in a Notre Dame cemetery near the campus where it started, in the Kentucky bluegrass, and in a South Carolina assisted living facility still waiting for the bill to come due. One is still on television. One is still talking about the disease no one can diagnose until it is too late. The '85 Bears won by 40 points in New Orleans and are still paying for it, one name at a time.